Hello and welcome to the Futro Hidden Movie Gems podcast. I'm your host, Ty Spiker Christensen. Because Dennis is a man. And we've got Jordan Christensen on the pod.
You big dumb bird.
And we've got Cameron Mickle on the pod.
I dropped my magnum.
For my magnum. Guys, today it's happening. We're talking about the deplorables. The basket of deplorables called It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yes, it's finally happening. Oh my gosh, guys. This series started in 2004 and it is still ongoing. It is now the longest running, I think they call it live action sitcom. I think that's how they define it. But basically it's the longest running sitcom style TV show it's 15th season just came out, and I think they got signed on for 16 and 17. I know for 16, but it just keeps going. I love it. These guys, man. Let's get into it. It was created by, I want to make sure I get their names right because I always say McElhenney. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but anyway, Charlie Day, Glenn Howerton, and Rob McElhenney. And these three guys, they're amazing. And this show is just so good. And it just never ceases to impress. So let's go around, get some first impressions. What was it like watching this series for the first time around? What's it like revisiting your favorite episodes? Why don't we start with you, Jordan? When was the first time you watched this show?
First time, I'm trying to think if somebody said something or I heard something. I might have seen a video on Wisecrack about it before I had seen it, possibly. I came across it on Netflix and I just watched an episode and I was hooked. And then I binge watched the whole series, and gosh dang. And it was a perfect background movie. At times, there's some times when I was trying to do homework and they were just constantly yelling at each other. And I'm like, okay, I can't focus.
It's too distracting, dude.
And sometimes I think they yell too much, but I do love the show. And I've only seen it once all the way through, but I got my roommate hooked on it, and so I would watch a lot of episodes with him. The fun part is you can jump in whenever. You really can start at whatever episode. I mean, even if you recommend it to people, you can just look up the episodes on, Google the top episodes, and I just rewatch those ones for this podcast, and I watch the ones that I know I love. And yeah, they all hold up really well.
Brilliant. Love it. Cameron, how about you? What was it like watching the It's Always Sunny for the first time, first exposure? What's it like watching it now?
I think the first episode I ever watched was the Nazi uniform episode.
The gang gets raced. Or no, yeah, that's the they go to the senior home. What was that one?
I don't know.
I can't even remember the plot of it.
They find the Nazi clothes and they're like, we probably should burn this. He's like, F that Nazi. We're gonna get some money out of it.
Dee and Dennis find their grandpa and he's like a Nazi.
Yeah, he was
or
like a
something
colonel.
Like that.
He was like
a
high
whole
up
uniform.
there, near one of the commanders
Yeah.
of Hitler. And they're like, what
Yeah.
the fuck?
They end up burning the outfit, but at the end, Charlie Day keeps the hat for himself while he's eating cereal.
And it's called. And then I remember watching another episode that it was the child child abuse episode when he's like, why wasn't I? And I was like,
the gang gets or I think it's Charlie gets.
Not gets, got.
Charlie got. Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Just point on this doll. Where?
That episode might have been a little too much because I remember Jordan showed it to me, Grant, when I was 15 or 16.
Yeah.
And I was like,
your guys' facial
So
expressions, just what am I watching?
Didn't know you can make jokes about this.
Yeah.
It turns out you can't. That's why it's so funny, dude.
and then rewatching it, I just watched a couple episodes. I'd seen a couple episodes. Jordan showed me an episode every once in a while, but it was fun watching certain episodes. Some of them, I think Jordan kind of nailed it. I think it's a better background TV show. I don't know how it's not as where Parks, kind of similar to Parks and Rec. I feel like sometimes where it's just oh yeah, you can jump in anywhere. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, it's definitely kind of better as background noise. But there's some really funny moments.
It's interesting because each episode is a standalone episode. However, characters you've met earlier on in the series, as the show goes on, their progression, or I guess his de-progression.
Digression.
Yeah, no one progresses in this show.
Yeah.
This is a steady decline, and the closer you are to the protagonist, the Patty's Pub crew, the faster to hell you go. It is purgatory. I think the bar is a metaphor for purgatory, and these are all demons, narcissists that are
it's not until
self-interested.
these last couple seasons that they finally started to develop as characters.
Well, And it's funny that you say that. I would even argue that sometimes there are moments of character progression, but they even take a step or maybe even 2 steps back every time they progress. But there have been genuine moments where they're really emotional and growth, but I still feel like the show as a whole, I mean, this is 15 seasons long. There's very little progression.
Which is why this is so much better than a lot of other sitcoms where it's like,
yes,
it's all about the progression as characters and you're with these people and
absolutely,
how they've become better people.
And I watched this cool video. I can't remember who did the video, but they said that this show is not just a sitcom, but it's an anti-sitcom because the characters refuse to progress. There are moments where they should have character moments where they should learn, but they just immediately undercut it with humor and with like just outright narcissism. Like they're just like, forget that. I want to win. I want what's good for me. It's just so funny. And these people are all despicable. So I don't know why I love this show so much, but they're just somehow they're redeemable enough. Is that even, I don't think it is. I don't think they are. Maybe there's like one character that's redeemable. I would argue Charlie's the most redeemable.
I think because of his innocence and his like lack of like intelligence.
His illiteracy? The guy can't read. Oh, you see that door marked pirate over there? You think a pirate lives in there? No. I see a door marked private.
No, my favorite is when they tried to read Charlie's map. And they're like, I don't understand anything.
Chicken denim. Worm hat? Oh, I don't know what a worm hat is.
No, I love it too.
So
when
funny,
in the episode when they play like the drinking game, when they're like reading off the name that Ty quoted in the beginning or whatever, and he's like, I did not write that. He's like, Charlie, you are the only person here who's illiterate.
Because Dennis is bad. Why Dennis bad? Or something like that. Like, he's like,
oh,
I
this
don't
is really
remember writing
good.
that one. He's like, you definitely wrote it. How many illiterates do we know, Charlie? Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Why Dennis?
So yeah. So I remember watching this show, binge watched like 10 seasons, because by the time I watched it, it was either 2016, it was either 15 or 16. And so I watched all the series up until that point. And then I remember watching, I think it was 13 when it rolled around and came out. And I'm like, I'm watching fresh new shows coming out like while it was happening. It was so crazy because I didn't realize how timely a lot of this stuff was, because to me, this stuff made sense because they were talking about like age-old stuff, like gang does abortion, gang gets guns. They do all the like political things where they make a mockery and a parody of the extreme of both sides of any argument, and they just poke fun at the extremes of both sides. But it was so weird because only until recently I'm like, oh yeah, these are like things that I hear about now. It is a very timely show for what it's worth. Because, I mean, I feel like it's hard to do that in comedy to make it timely, because I've been watching a lot of Netflix comedy specials right now, and everyone's talking about COVID, and it just seems so dated already. Like, I mean, here we are in 2022. A lot of the specials that came out just this last year already feel so out of date and out of touch. It's just weird. I mean, Jared mentioned the COVID special from South Park. Even that felt... But again, that was just a swing and a miss because they didn't know that we'd be ending up where we are now. So.
Well, I think...
But it's just very interesting.
I think it's one of those things also. It's like, it's kind of like beating the dead horse. It's just like, we've heard so much about it and we complain so much in our daily life that we're like, we want to hear something new. It's like we already have heard and thought of every joke that you could pretty much possibly like hear.
Exactly.
Talk about with
or we're still sore about it, right? I mean, it's hard to joke about this thing,
because
right?
we still
I mean,
have to deal with masks and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, it's annoying, but like, I don't want to hear how annoying my life is.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I had a problem with this. I mean, not a problem. I just had a hard time getting through the last season because I'm like, I really am looking for an escape. I'm not looking for a reminder of what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like the less of it, the better. But I still enjoyed the few gags that I hadn't seen, which I totally agree with. Like one was Dennis trying not to cough. That was just great.
Yeah,
I love that because I haven't seen that yet. And I have seen, maybe there are other people that have done jokes like that. But like at work, when I talk to seniors, sometimes I get a tickle in my throat and I'm like, oh, don't cough. I don't want them to freak out and throw me out of their house.
The worst is when you...
like, I've had that.
You're like, I don't have COVID, but I need to cough. And it's like,
I need to cough.
You can't do it in public.
or just having a regular cold, like, is the worst time.
Just a regular cold, and try to stifle coughing. When you notice, like, you're watching a movie or you're in a lecture hall or something like that, and, like, you have a tickle in the back of your throat, and you're like, you keep coughing, you're like, everyone's hearing me right now. Like, I'm going to try to stifle it, and you just get that tickle, and you're just like, ah! Like, Dennis was so good, dude. He's just like, it was so over the top and made it just so great. Like, it's so stupid, but it's just delightful. So I love watching this show. I'm so glad they're still making it, and I love that these creative minds, Charlie, McElhaney, and Glenn, these three guys come together after all these years. They've done their own individual projects. They've gone into movies. They've gone into their own TV shows, AP Bio, for example, and Charlie Day was in like in Pacific Rim and many other movies. Rob also doing other projects, but in the end, they all came back together because they realized like what they have here is really
and Rob
special.
did a couple small projects, you know.
Well, he did the Mythic Quest, which I thought was kind of funny, but it wasn't really my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So, but in the end, I'm glad to see them doing other things, but I'm so glad they come back because it's almost...
Yeah, Dee was also in a show called The Mick, which is pretty funny.
And she was also in Arizona with...
I really don't like Dee. I think
right.
she's so annoying.
Dude, do you
Well,
know...
that's
Mac's real wife, that's his real wife. They're married together.
No way.
So.
Yeah, and Charlie is actually married to the waitress, Cameron.
To the waitress that he stalks, which makes it so funny.
Really?
And,
That's hilarious.
And Dennis's wife makes one appearance in the Dennis episode, the girl that he establishes dependence with. I don't know if you've seen this episode.
That's his
Karen.
wife?
That's
the Dennis
his real
system?
wife.
I just watched that like 5 minutes ago.
Yes, the Dennis system. So the girl that he's stalking in there and terrifies, that's his real
The
wife.
pharmacist lady?
Yes, the pharmacist. Yep,
That's hilarious.
his real life wife, which is always so funny. So all of their wives have been featured on this show to different degrees, but it's always really funny to see that each one of them played like a really perfect role in the episode they were in. Yeah, so I would just say the show I think is great, and I love it. The humor lands, and years later, after the shows aren't relevant, they still have a leg to stand on because they are so gosh dang funny. This is so funny and so irreverent. It's just such a guilty pleasure of mine. So anyone that wants to get offended or watch something smart and smarmy and silly and wacky out there, physical comedy mixed with just irreverent humor, look no further than It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's kind of up that like Rick and Morty vein.
Yes, it really is. Like again, you mentioned Yelly. So this show,
Except Rick and Morty
it
tries to be more sometimes like more intelligent humor, whereas this is I think it's plays to its benefit because it doesn't try so hard sometimes that it is just like funnier.
I would say, though, it is actually very intelligent, though, right?
Well,
or
no,
which
yeah,
one?
but like
this show,
this show.
or
no,
Rick
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
Morty?
But like, I feel like what's called Rick and Morty tries so hard to be kind of like so intelligent with
Yeah,
their humor.
thank you. Yeah.
That like this show it just naturally
And it goes for the obscure too. Like this one has more wide appeal. Like Rick and Morty, a lot of the Easter egg and referential jokes, even if I were to understand them, I don't often find myself being like, oh my gosh, that was so clever. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, like that's funny. That's an old UHF movie I used to watch, like a cult UHF
well,
movie.
and they're essentially saying
sci-fi.
if you're not laughing at this, it's because you're not very smart, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay.
And plus, I feel like it's less
obscure
like,
reference.
applicable. I can't even speak English. Like it applies like a lot of the things that they talk about. It's like, well, I don't really just deal with these problems, you know. That's why I feel like Rick and Morty is less relatable. That's the word. And I feel versus Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like we'll obviously go to the extremes, but it talks about more relatable things. Like like dating or like liking somebody, talking to people, like taxes, this and that. Like it's just really funny.
Well, I would also describe it as they do all the things like you might think in the darkest part of your mind, but never try to act on.
Yes, and you would never say it out loud.
Yeah.
You would never say these things, and they say it, which is why I love the show.
Dude, being a cripple sucks. There's literally no benefits. It's so much work.
Or just exploiting all that is like bad in people, like it just taking advantage of every situation. As soon as they learn, wait a minute, I can get something out of this. Like they're trying to help somebody, and like Charlie when he's got cancer, all of a sudden realize, wait a minute, this can help me get girls. And suddenly it's like...
I know, they did that in that 50-50 movie, right? I wanted to see that with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Seth Rogen.
Really
He makes a joke where he's like, girls love it when they find out, like, because they feel all sympathetic for him. And he like goes to a girl in a bar and he's like, I have cancer. He goes, no, that sounded so wrong. He's like, that was too depressing. Abort. I thought that was really funny. Like, because it's like, yeah, there's probably a way to game it where you're like, oh yeah, I'm just battling cancer right now and it's hard and everything. And so they game it. And that's these folks. Anytime someone has a real problem, they look at it and they're like, we could do that. We could game it for ourselves. And then like they just scam everything. These are scam artists. That's what makes this show so funny. Is like every situation they can get by. Like again, first season. I mean, one thing I wanted to point out though, because we're going to go through our top 10 list. But what I love is early on, Robin McElhenney said that in an interview, the show was created around the idea that he has a friend that has cancer, and he goes over to borrow a cup of sugar, or like, in the show, it's a basketball. He goes to get a basketball, and he finds that his friend confesses that he has cancer, and he's like, oh, like, I want to stay and be there for you, but like, I really just want the cup of sugar. So, like, it's just the most despicable, what low life do you have to be to not be there for your friend if they had cancer, told you in confidence?
Yeah, but Ty, have you ever had a person tell you that? Like, I've had a person at work tell me that, and I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. No, and that's
I didn't even know
fair.
the person very well. Like, I sat next to him, but...
So, in your defense, right, you don't know the person, so it's hard to know what to do. These are supposed to be best friends.
Oh, good
they
point.
own a business together. It's like your best friend coming to you and being like, I have this problem. You're like, yeah, but I just need the basketball. Like, I just need to go. Like, I got what I came here for. Could you make this more convenient for me? Right? That's the show. And so, but yeah, you're right. There are people that overshare and you don't know enough about them. You're like, I don't even know. Should I give you a hug right now? Or sorry, I'll pray for you. Who knows?
It reminds me of Millions when the little kids are like, my mom's dead. And he's like,
my mom's dead.
He hands them cookies.
Yeah, I was like, okay. Okay, that got dark. Exactly. So anyway, there are so many things to quote, but I want to get into our top favorite episodes. So I have a list of 10. Cameron, I'd love to hear from you. Why don't you share some of your favorite episodes?
Or just favorite things
as a whole. Or just favorite things, scams or schemes or whatever you want to do.
I don't even know if I've seen 10 episodes, but I did watch a couple this week for the pod. I do love the dentist system. I've watched that episode twice. Really, really funny.
Okay,
So
we need to
funny.
talk. We need to unpack this episode. So, do you have the letters, the acronym, Dennis's name? I have it written down here if you guys want to hear it.
Really? Let's hear it.
Yeah. So D stands for demonstrate value, engage physically is E, and then N is nurture dependence.
And then isn't it neglect entirely or something?
Yeah, and then where is it? The second N is ignore. Wait, one second. Where is it? You're gonna do it. Oh, the second N. Yeah, it's ignore. Oh wait, no, but that's not N. But anyway, ignore all the phone calls, right? Yeah, you just completely cut the ties. I is inspire hope, and then S is separate entirely. So, and again, it's so great because the episode starts obviously with Dennis getting this phone call, a voice message from this girl. She's like, "I hate you so much, Dennis. I hate you. I never want to see you again." He goes, "Dude, this girl's so in love with me."
I love it too. What's it called? Like that Max, like, oh yeah, I get seconds, and then Danny DeVito
The
gets
sloppy seconds.
Yeah, and he gets like
Move in after completion. The Max is
it's a delicate ecosystem.
It's a delicate ecosystem, man.
And then,
Oh my gosh.
and then Frank takes even the thirds. Like,
He takes the thirds, dude. I show up with my wad of hundreds
And my Magnum.
Magnum. Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
word,
love
it's
it.
just so great.
I love it at the end
go
where
ahead.
he's with his grandma or with his fake grandma, and he's like, what am I doing here? You're gonna play as my grandma. My grandma had an affair with Harriet Tubman. I don't give a It's like disregard.
My grandma was. No one says anything. They just ignore her. That's the depths these people will descend to get their way. Dennis hires this fake grandma to pretend like he cares about this old woman to get his ex back.
I love
with him.
it too
It's
because
just-
a lot of times Dee is like the voice of reason and like the audience voice, and then all of them are just like, "Shut up, Dee, you don't understand."
And it's funny that you say that. Early on, that was her role, and then she fought against that. She said, I don't want to be the voice of reason. I'm going to be just as funny, if not funnier than you guys. And she has had some amazing sketches that I have in mind. But I agree. That was her role initially, was to be like the voice of reason. But eventually she's like, no, I could be just as selfish. And she's created like an amazing character that's so depressing. Like there's a time capsule. She like wrote in herself like, oh, here's a check for $1 million and write it out to thank you to your old high school acting teacher or whatever it was, right? Like she thought she was going to be this famous star, and she just has delusions of grandeur. It's just, it's so sad and pathetic. It's great. So I love that. But yeah, they always just yell at Dee. Like she is the punching bag of the show for sure.
Yeah, and then I also watched the Suburbs episode, which is pretty funny, just like showing kind of like how boring and different the life is outside the
Mac's
city.
famous mac and cheese. I've lived in Mexico for a long time and never heard of this.
And he opens the fetching cupboard and just all the mac and cheese pours out.
I love it when he's burying the dog and he's like, "How does Dennis taste, Dennis?" He's like, "Ew, what the?" And he's like, "Do you hear that chirping?" "Yes, I hear that chirping." He's like, "Why do you say anything?" "'Cause I hate you." That
He just strips down bare naked and starts yelling at his neighbor. Like, it's so crazy.
And it's all in his head. And he's like, "Who are you talking to?" He's talking to a tree. And he's like, "Nobody." So that was a really funny episode. And I'm trying to think of, there was one other I watched. Oh yeah, I watched the drinking game one, which was pretty funny. That was a really good twist of like how they were drinking water and that's how they win every time. I love when they throw the water at him in the dog
the Mac
cage.
D, Dennis, yeah, what do they call it? Like Chardy Mac thing game. Yeah, there's like a game that they all play. It's nonsensical.
Yeah.
And they were cheating, right? D and
See, that one is an example of just too much screaming. That just gives me a headache.
it is. It can elevate your blood pressure for sure. The show is not structured like your general TV show where it's like line of dialogue delivered by this character and their reaction to this new. It's just like all of them yelling over each other. Like this is almost like watching Uncut Gems. This is the TV show of Uncut Gems. It's just a bunch of people yelling at each other and character flawed just as
Uncut
much,
Gems
if not more
Rick and
so
Morty.
than Adam. Not Ben Stiller. Gosh, I was right the first time. Adam, what's his name? I'm an idiot. What's the actor's name that played in Uncut Gems? Adam Sandler. Gosh, I couldn't think of his last name.
But
Adam Sandler.
yeah, I
so.
think my overall just favorite thing about the show, I love Dennis and Mac are my favorite. I just love Dennis and his because some of the things he says are just like so narcissistic. I love it. And then Mac is just so funny. I love how he is just like the wingman to Dennis of everything that Dennis does. Like Max just compliments it so well.
But they fight a lot,
Oh, yeah.
which is so funny. Cameron, there's an episode where this guy keels over and dies in their bar, and the daughter comes in, and she's not that bad looking, and they both start hitting on her, and he's like, "Oh, but I did know your father, and he was a really great man." And they both start trying to one-up each other on this grieving daughter. It is so good. And like just before they were talking about how this gross old man's dying and killed over in their bar. They're just like so upset about it. And then the daughter walks in and they like see an opportunity. That's the show. They exploit every opportunity to get anything out of it, whether it's a date from a girl or it's to score drugs, money, whatever it is. Like, they're just such deplorable people.
Yeah.
It's just, like, so great. He's like, "Oh, I knew your father." Like, and he starts making up all these stories. Like, it's so good, dude. It's brilliant.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
That's great. I'm glad you contributed on those few episodes because you mentioned one of the episodes, the dentist system, is in my top 10.
Yeah,
I think
mine
it's
too.
a very funny
I had
episode
also
because
seen the Hitler episode, sorry, and that one was pretty funny. Like, or the Nazi.
and the Hitler. Yeah, for sure. So before I go into me and George's top 10, I just wanted to throw out here for the listeners. So I put down each of our characters. So I put Jordan, your character in this TV show is Charlie.
100%.
Yes, Charlie work. Charlie has to deal with the sludge and the slime. He's got to do all the work that we don't want to do on the podcast. He gets no recognition. Jordan, you're illiterate. You share that in common. I'm kidding, dude. You can read somewhat. I don't learn to read. These dumb signs couldn't make me more smarter. Flowers for Charlie, dude. It's such a great episode. Okay, anyway. But yeah, so Jordan is Charlie. You do all the work and get no appreciation for it. I'm Fat Mac. Mac in season either 6 or 7, he gained 60 pounds. He's so overweight. He's a chubby guy. And I see the spirit animal as Fat Mac, like saying all these jokes, fixated on jokes. I don't know why, dude. Maybe because I'm but anyway, he makes me laugh. He's so funny and overweight. All the fat humor comes from Mac when he's dancing on one of my top 10 episodes. We'll talk into it, Frank's Little Beauties. And the high school reunion where Mac is dancing and he opens his shirt. Like, it's too much of like the things that I did. Like, I love fat shaming. I think it's so funny. There's so much humor to be
episode
derived.
made your top 10? Oh, no.
The beauty pageantry? Yes. The high school reunion. It was between that one or the high school reunion. They both have an amazing dance number. But anyway, Mac gets to shake those overweight hips, those love handles. Just so funny with his belly shirt. His shirt keeps creeping up and he keeps seeing more of his belly, dude. It's so good. So yeah, I'm Fat Mac. And then Cameron, you are Dennis, I'm afraid to say. You can fly off the handle. You can get pretty angry at times. But, you're not as narcissistic, of course. Nor as creepy, because as the show has progressed, there's one thing that's for sure, is that Dennis is, in fact, a serial killer. Just has a lot of issues that he's working through. But that's not what I think of you, Karen. I think of you as flying off the handle when he gets super angry and he yells. That's what makes me think of you, dude. It's not a starter car. It's a finisher car. It transports the golden god. Just makes me laugh, dude. That's Dennis, dude.
Dennis kind of the TV series as it goes on reminds me a little bit of Arrested Development. Well, I still think it's got it, though, in compared to Arrested Development, but in the later seasons, I just feel like a good example is Tobias, for example. Like, before it was like, you didn't know if he was gay or he just kept making all these...
It was ambiguous.
Yeah. And then it's just kind of like they embraced it by the later seasons. And I mean, I'm fine if that's the direction you want to go with it, but I just was kind of bummed because you missed out on a lot of jokes that you can keep telling like that. And like the idea of people not progressing, now that he's progressed, it's like... Now, I mean, you can go into a whole new world of jokes, which I am enjoying, but I just liked it better because, I don't know, I'm a little bummed because, like, for example, Mac, like, his progression now, it's just, like, he still is, I mean, the worst, but at the same time, like, I enjoyed when he was making all the jokes before, but I guess... I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Dating a and then saying, oh, her new boyfriend, he's the one. It's like, you dated her when she's...
I just love when he turns around and punches her in the face, and then he runs back and he's like all out of breath, and he's like, guys, I just punched her in the face. And then I love the guy in the crowd too. He's like, I think that's a hate crime. Because he punches him, and she's like, hey, I just punched a chick. And then he's like, it's okay, guys, it's a dude. I think that's a hate crime.
And he used to date her, and he didn't want anyone to know, so I can't remember the lie he told everyone, but he's like, oh, they thought he was a serial killer. They all thought he was hiding a secret because he was running around. It's the episode where Mac is a serial killer. He's dating the person, and they think he's the serial killer. And at the end of the episode, it's revealed that the guy that works at the store that Dee takes advantage of, he's got like 15 severed heads in his fridge.
I don't remember that one.
But you don't remember that one? It's great, Jordan. But they think, because Mac is hiding a secret, they think he's a killer, but he's really just dating it. He doesn't want them to know.
I love when there's that twin, there's a fatter Dennis that is a...
Yes, Dennis has this doppelganger. That made me think of Enemy, dude. Like, that whole episode, that whole thing, it made me think of Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal fighting against himself. But anyway, I love that. Like, the fat suit, Dennis, I just love it. I honestly feel like in the room, the writing room, when you have Rob, Charlie, and Glenn all writing, I almost feel like they're like taking jabs at each other. Just like, I can make you do and say the most obnoxious, evil stuff, or just the dumbest stuff, and they're just gonna make fun of each other. And so like the two of them write material for the other one, and then the other two write the material for... I just feel like they go in a triangle and they all just try to out insult each other, and it just makes it so funny. Like, they, just totally like... And you guys mentioned it, right? Like how a character progresses. One example of this was like, I don't know what to call it. It's just kind of like the cartoonization of a character as the TV show goes on. Like, for example, Kevin in The Office. He's like the bigger guy, right? And he's the accountant. He doesn't really do anything. And at the end of the show, he is like literally has the IQ of a potato. Like, he's so dumb. Holly dates Michael Scott, thinks that he's like handicapped or whatever, right? It's like his progression just went so far, like cartoonishly dumb, right? Like it just, that's the progression of TV though, right? Because you like kind of become a parody of yourself. You just kind of go farther and farther. And that's kind of what Dennis became with the serial killer. Before it was always like these subtle hints and not so subtle, but eventually it's just like outright, he's yelling all the time now. He's like at the point of murdering everybody. He's confessed to murders. I swear you would be more use to me as a lampshade or a high-end piece of luggage. Are you saying you have a collection of skin luggage? No, of course not. You haven't thought of the smell. You haven't thought of the smell, you... So good, dude. Oh my God.
See, I don't know. Like, for example, that, like, embracing it and just making jokes now that you can make a whole new world of jokes. Personally, I like it better when they're so subtle, like, you're like, ooh, could he be? I don't know. Like, I just...
Like the boat. That's one of my top 10.
Yes.
They get a houseboat.
That is in my top 10 as well.
Because of the implication.
Because of the implication. See, when you say it like that, I feel like you're not getting this.
You're not understanding me.
And I see
You're
it's
not when
on
it
the
sounds
water.
like he's gonna hurt those girls.
Yes. But they're not in any danger. But see, she's thinking that something could go wrong because she's out there on the ocean, and she's not going to say no. And if she said no, the answer is obviously no. But she's not going to say no because of the implication.
And then I love when Mac, when he finally gets on board with it, he's like telling the girls, he's like, we're going to be out in the water and you can't do anything about it. And then Dennis is like, oh no, he's not getting this at all. Like,
yes.
And then I love when they go to the guy's boat and then all the guys are like,
hey, we're going to get our special treats out in the open water. Huh? And he's like, wait, they're going to take us out in the open water. And he's like, is this how you want those ladies to feel?
and then he's like, where are the tasty treats?
Where are the tasty treats? At the very end, though, that's what he says, right, when they're all walking back. He's like, I can't wait to get you out to sea where you can be alone and make rash decisions in fear. Right, Dennis?
Yes.
Oh, it's so good, dude. Oh, my gosh. So they will be in danger. No one is in danger. I feel like you're not getting me. You need to understand where I'm coming from. I've been going in circles trying to explain this to you.
See,
oh, my gosh. I don't want to hurt these women. No one's going to hurt these women. Don't look at me like that. Oh my gosh. Because Mac is clearly perturbed by Dennis. Like, oh, it's so good. Yeah, you're right though. Like, and yes, the jokes just eventually progress to that point. Right?
Well, and that's why I like the earlier seasons personally.
Again, they haven't crossed it because he hasn't like officially murdered someone. He hasn't gone to jail. Like, there's no change. It's just you're seeing more and more manifestations. Like the high school reunion, right? He's like, I got tools and binding stuff, you know. I like to be bound. He's got zip ties and duct tape and chloroform in his truck. Like, what? It's just all these like hints they drop along the way. And you can tell, like, again, what's so funny is Mac and Charlie, they both use their first names. Glenn, they always knew that his would be the most deplorable, so he actually didn't choose his name Dennis. He chose a different name, not his own name. To Glenn's credit, that's probably for the best. I would not, out of all three, he would be the one I would be most fearful of being associated with in real life. For sure. So I can respect Glenn's decision to separate himself and not be named after his character in the show, which is funny. So, but Jordan, I want to hear your episodes, dude. So let's get to
really
your
quick.
list.
I want to know you guys' favorite characters. I think Dennis is my favorite. I love them all, but
that's so funny. So is it the one that makes me laugh the most, or like the one I guess like the most? I guess. To me, it's Charlie Day. I think I don't know. I think Charlie.
Yeah, I said Mac and Dennis.
Mac and Dennis. I think those two together play the best.
Yes.
I think them being the two bros, because Mac kind of plays like the dumber, like it's almost like watching like a Draco Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle situation. Dennis is always like just belittling Mac, and I love that. I don't know why.
Yes.
Like he's always like, oh, like you don't understand this. He's like, oh, but I do. Like learn it from me, and then it always blows up in Dennis's face when he tries to show Mac. I love that. Like that, it just never gets old. It never does.
Which kind of gets into some of my top 10 because one at number, well, that's 9, but so I'll just say number 9 is the gang text and the part where he's like peeing on him, showing his dominance. Like
they're urinating on each other like meerkats, right? Yeah. Setting their territory.
But I mean, I love that. But my favorite part about that though is the texting, because I am so Mac when it comes to texting. So I know you said I'm Charlie, but I feel like we all kind of have different parts from each character. And I feel like everybody, and like we've mentioned, they essentially showed the worst of humanity. And I feel like we all, because we're all humans, we all make mistakes. I feel like a lot of these horrible things they've done, either we've thought about or sometimes they slip out, or things we do, not realizing like how horrible they are because maybe we think, I mean, we just got a one-tracked mind for certain thing, and we could be doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, is that the zoo episode? I think I've seen that.
Yeah.
Episode,
Yes.
Yeah. I think I showed you a couple. This one,
Do you want me to start sharing my I can start with number 10.
Yeah, we'll just go back and forth. Yeah. Let's do.
So I think I actually technically didn't necessarily order them in order from least to favorite, but I did put like from the first. So like this is from season 1. It's called Dennis and Dee Go on Welfare, and it's just a hilarious premise because I remember growing up. I remember we have a conservative father, so he would always tell us like, "Oh, these dang bums, they're just living on the government, like they don't get a job," and it's so.
I don't think I've ever heard Dad say that, but okay.
I remember learning that.
Like, I mean, I've heard
I just remember him
of that
it,
expression being said, like, Jim Gaffigan saying, living up to government.
But see, when Gaffigan said that also made me think of Dad. I'm like, that's so funny. I heard him say
I think of Dad, but Dad, I've never heard Dad say that exact phrase.
Yeah. Like, I remember hearing that and being like, oh, wow, like, there are lazy people that decide not to work. And that's when I was like, I'm conservative, you know, and I grew up conservative, and I largely still am, but more libertarian, anti-establishmentarianism now, but... But there's a scene where Dennis and Dee go into the Social Security office, and they're just like, I'm a recovering crackhead, and this is my retarded sister. We'd like some welfare, please. It's so good. And they're like, okay, well, I'm going to need you to fill out this form, prove that that your sister's retarded and that you are addicted to crack. And he goes, can you not, do you see her? Do you see how she is? She's got a bike helmet on backwards, and she's like playing with a little pen. It's so good, dude. It's just so funny. And then at the very end, it gets so out of hand. Frank ends up showing up with all this money. Charlie and Max spend all his money. They ride around in a limo with all these women, and they're all laughing, having a great time. And they drive past Dee and Dennis, who start taking crack so they can collect welfare. So they actually bought crack so they could have it in their system so they could go on welfare. Like, again, these guys are trying to game it, right? And anyway, they're mocking them at the end. They're like crack addicted. Their eyes are like swollen. They're like itchy. They're like all disheveled. And they're like, oh, did you get addicted to crack? Did you get addicted to crack? I just die every time watching that. So that's just so great. So, and then later there's a long running joke later on in another one of my favorite episodes, and we'll go into that later. I won't spoil it yet. But Dennis and Dee get hooked on crack, thinking that they're going to change their lives, they're going to become movie stars, they're going to do all these things, and they just end up spending all their money on crack. So funny. So the gang gets guns or whatever, or the gang, what is it called? The gang gets a gun or something like that. And there's 2 episodes where they actually deal with this gun issue. So the first one, they get like a break-in at the bar, so they buy a handgun, and they all get like gun fever or whatever. And Charlie is so funny. He gets the gun. He threatens his landlord. Or like, he has the gun tucked into his pants, and he's like, yeah, well, I think we have an understanding here, right? And he's like threatens his landlord. He's like, I'll get you the money, but he has the gun. And he's like, okay, Charlie. And then after he closes the door, he like grabs the gun, and he's just like sniffs it, and he's like shivering. And then I don't know. Charlie's just so great, dude. So that's hilarious. And then obviously Dee gets shot, or not Dee, but Charlie gets shot by Dennis at the end of the episode. And they're like, he's in the hospital. He's like, oh, we got to get rid of the gun. We're definitely gonna get rid of the gun. They tell Dee, and then after she leaves, he's like, there's no way we're getting rid of the gun. I love it. And then seasons later, there's one other episode. It's like the gang gets more guns, and it starts with Frank on TV, and it's the best monologue. He talks about how he's walking. He's like, I'm walking down this. He's on TV. He's like, can you put the sandwich away, sir? He's like, you guys don't have any food here. He sits down in front of the TV. He's like, all right. So there I was, walking down the park or whatever, or down the alleyway, and all these people, shady fellas, come up and try to get to me. He's like, I don't know if they just wanted money or something more. But he goes, but thankfully I had my pieces with me. Your pieces? He goes, my guns. And he pulls out 2, like they just appear out of nowhere. And he's got 2 guns. And he's like, my pieces. So, and then there I was. So I started blasting. Bang, bang, bang. But I don't see too good. So I try to chase after him. But I don't run so good either. And he's like, weren't you worried that you'd hit an innocent bystander? And he goes, so folks, it's your American right to go down to Gunther's and Guns and buy them, because I don't think one would have done it. It's just so good. I love it. And then I just love that. My pieces, my guns. So anyway, and then Dee and Dennis try to make a point about making how easy it is to get a gun and shoot up the world, because there's school shootings going on. There's all these mass murders and stuff with gun violence, and they're like, oh, look how easy it is. Look at us. I'd like a gun that could kill 15 people, please. In an instant. And like, oh yeah, we got something like that, but that's on you. And then he goes, okay, I'm just gonna need some ID. And so they give him an ID. And he comes back with a background check, and he goes, you guys were denied. And they're like, what do you mean we were denied? It's like, you had a history of crack, drugs, which again they did from the first season, and then they also mention a few new things. They say, Dennis is like, well, I've lived a little rambunctiously or whatever. And then he's like, and Dee, it says here you set someone on fire. And she's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I had one roommate. She was super annoying. And she was always wearing my clothes and copycatting me. And Dennis sitting next to her is like, well, you were copycatting her. It's like, copycatting me, copycatting her. It doesn't matter. And she's like, and you set one person on fire, one girl on fire, and everyone just freaks out. So it's great. They get denied getting a gun, which is just so funny. I just love that. They're like trying to make a point of how easy it is to get a gun, and they can't procure one. It's gold. Just comedy gold. So funny. So those 2 just go hand in hand. They go on welfare, get addicted to crack. Years later, try to make a point about getting a gun, and they can't do it. It's just so funny. So good callback. Great comedic gold right there. So those are 2 of my 9 and 10. Jordan, how about you, man? What's your next? Give
Well,
us your
you
episode.
guys have already mentioned the majority of them, so I'll just mention the ones we haven't already said.
Yeah.
The Gang Turns Black is one of my favorite episodes, and I show a lot of people because
The music video, or the
musical,
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
What are the rules?
What are the rules? I'm gonna say, hey. I'm gonna say, what's up?
Gonna say the
I'm
N
gonna use
word.
the N word.
No.
Whoa. Oh, it's so great.
Such fun songs, and then at the very end, I mean, it couldn't have been a more perfect ending when the kid's like, "They gave me this train. He's got a gun." They just start shooting him, and then we just learned a lesson. Oh yeah, he's like bleeding out as they're singing. Perfect ending to a perfect episode. I show that to so many people. I showed it to mom and dad, and I love it so much. And then I love The Gang Does a Clip Show, which is that one. Speaking of Rick and Morty,
I'm curious to know what mom and dad's reaction was to that, Jordo.
they actually really liked it. Mom loved it. I showed it to mom first, and then she wanted everybody else in the family to see it, so we showed the rest. And then dad's like, "Yeah, there's a lot of language."
Yeah, that's an understatement. But to their credit, for a TV MA show, it surprisingly has fewer F words than most.
Well,
I would
in these
argue.
later seasons, I feel like there's more, but
There has been a few.
I also noticed with the earlier seasons, some of it was edited, like they'd be bleeped.
Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, just on iTunes. I
That's
don't know
kinda
if it's
like Rick and
different
Morty.
somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah, but they
Yeah.
changed that. It used to be bleeped, and now it's not. It sucks.
Used to be bleeped. Now they don't, yeah.
Because I kind of liked the bleeped words, but whatever.
Yeah, I thought it made it funnier, honestly.
Yeah,
I
me
personally
too.
do too, yeah.
More
because
more
there's-
comedic effect than just like saying it.
It is, because it's almost like when they censor it, it's like you forget, yeah, he's saying this to his grandson, but when you hear the word, you're just like, it's just hits you. But
Yeah.
like, for some reason, beeping it almost makes it seem like, oh my gosh, like he shouldn't be saying this in front of a kid, but you kind of forget it when he's just allowed to say it, right? I totally agree. Yeah, bleeping, I think, is more impactful to me than actually hearing it personally.
Well, and we mentioned The Gang Does a Clip Show. I mean, sorry, we mentioned Rick and Morty, which reminds me of this episode, The Gang Does a Clip Show, because it's pretty clever, where it's like, it all has to do with memory, and it's like, as they're telling stories, it's how they remember it, and which I
Yes.
think is so fun, especially when they're telling the one about Seinfeld, and he's like, that's just an episode from Seinfeld, and it's like...
Yeah, they're like, because they're all recalling memories that they had on the show, and it starts innocent enough where it's actually callbacks, like they cut in a few clips of like funny things they had together. Every season or every TV show has this, where they take clips of it, you know. I totally agree. And then they just start morphing into like, wait, it didn't happen like that. And then it's just straight out an episode of Seinfeld. It's so funny, dude. I love
Another one of my favorite episodes is Time's Up for the Gang, and I just love it because...
Time's up.
Yeah, time's up. And I mean, I just love that whole episode. I love it. It's getting hot in here. Like every time they realize that they've, broken the rules and essentially like they could get canceled, like
They're getting canceled for Me Too movement.
yeah, so suddenly they're all like getting really sweaty and they're like, oh man, it's getting really hot in here. And that whole episode just kills me. And especially because Dennis, like you see a little bit more of his serial killer side, but like it's still kind of dubious. It's like, he's like, I've gotten messages and approval and permission from all these girls. And then he starts showing
I'm signed
images.
this way. I consent to anything that may or may not transpire tonight. Like NDAs, basically.
Yeah.
Consent forms. It's so disturbing.
Permission,
right?
and it's like clearly he stole their phones and texted it out and like killed these
it's like a
girls.
prepared statement.
Yeah, it's so good.
I, Clara, have free will, my own free will and volition. Consent to, it's so terrifying.
Well, and then I forgot to mention of the gang text. I was just gonna say I'm so much like Mac in the sense like I'll send these really, really long texts
and then
and
Cameron and I, thumbs up.
yeah, just like
Okay.
or no response at all. Like I'll send a
No
ton of
response.
texts, nothing.
Just silent.
Maybe they didn't understand me. I'm just gonna send another message.
I'm gonna send another message.
So, and then, so that, we've already mentioned all my other favorite 10 episodes already, but I just, a few moments that I absolutely love, and believe it or not, this is crazy, because this show, you would never think I would feel this emotion, but I did cry in one episode, and that was Mac finding his pride. Just when he sits there, does that dance, I'm like, oh wow, like, and then Frank is like, I get it. It was very powerful because it was the first time you saw growth from a character and you saw him like trying to open up to his father.
And season 13?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, like after 13 seasons, they refused to end any episode with like any like meaningful way, because it was always like a kick in the, because they would always be like, yeah, we're not going to change, we're just going to stay as we are. And that was the first one where they finally, after 13 seasons,
And he opened
had
up to
this
his dad,
emotional
who
ending.
would have killed him if he had known about it, you know? And so it was just like, wow. Like, and you've seen all the other episodes up until then, and so finally throwing that out, it was just like unexpected. So I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah, very
It took a different turn. And obviously all the moments you guys have said already, I mean, just died laughing so many times. This show is great.
I love it, dude. Love it. So my number 7 is Frank Sets Sweet Dee on Fire. This episode reminds me a lot of Nightcrawler, because basically the whole premise is Charlie and Frank and Mac, they all take a video camera and they go around trying to film, stuff to try to get a big news story. And so they basically plant a lot of stories to try to make the news more exciting. It's literally Nightcrawler, but Mac's anchor face and voice, he just always puts his finger up to his ears like, this just did. It's like, this just did. Word is that there's a litter of adorable kittens in this building that could erupt in flames any moment. Who will save them? It's just so funny. He's sweating constantly. Like, it's so funny. And he's wearing this ridiculous blazer and he has like this spray on tan. Like, it's so funny. And then
I need to know though, is the Nightman on your list? I'm just curious.
I put honorable mentions. The Nightman musical.
Because you would sing that all the time.
Dayman, oh, fighter of the Nightman, oh. Yeah, it's amazing. I love that musical. But the episode as a whole isn't my favorite. But it is a great finale because Charlie does propose to the waitress. It's amazing. Of course, she rejects him, which is so sad.
Is that it? Are we done?
Is that it? Yeah, I'm going. And she's like, what about the answer? Will you marry me?
Will I marry you? No, Charlie.
Will I marry you? No, Charlie. Just please. And the season ends and you're just like, oh my
He's like, well, then I never really agreed. We didn't write it in paper, so
it doesn't count.
I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, it's so great. So yeah, that's a great one. And then what's so funny about this, they're running around with the video camera. It has one of the greatest freak out moments. So they're in like this, they see like everyone freaking out in Chinatown. They're like, oh, something's always happening here. Like maybe it's like the new pandemic breaking out and everything. And then there's just two people playing Wii tennis or whatever. And everyone, like a whole crowd's gathered. Some guy starts choking on a piece of shrimp. Mac punches him right in the stomach and he spits it out. He's like, here, I saved you. So funny. And then like,
yes,
and then
they
he's like,
don't
Charlie,
call...
you got that on camera, right? And he's just like, yeah, I would have, but I didn't put a tape in. He's like, you didn't put a tape in the camera? He's like, well, see, I taped this flashlight around the camera so we could see the light, and I forgot to put the tape in before I put the tape around, but then I have to take the tape off, and so I just figured, well, just it's like, you can't film if you don't have a camera. And he's like, oh, I forgot to put the tape in. I forgot to put the tape in. He just freaks out at him, and it's so funny. Like, they're yelling at each other. It's so great. And then, of course, they end up in this nursing home. They're, like, asking the seniors, and Frank's like, I don't want to end up here. I heard that they or whatever. And he's like, no one's. So they ask the seniors, like, what goes on here, Helga? And then she's like, well, I get up at 6 a.m. He goes, okay, none of the boring stuff, Helga. He's like, tell us what you don't like about this place. He's like, racist hack. It's so good, dude. So funny. I just love it. I die. That episode is so funny. They end up, Dee goes into the building to become a hero. They set it on fire. It blows up. Dee is literally on fire, and she runs out of the building with the litter of kittens and throws them because she's literally engulfed in flames. And they're like, "Hey, I looked kind of heroic." It's like, "Yeah, but you threw the litter of kittens at the end. Like, you got to do it again." So they make her go down to a well, and he's like, "It's just a well. You're gonna save the kittens in the well." And then Frank sets it on fire. Sets the well on fire. She goes, "Oh gosh, dang!" She's throwing the kittens again. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. And at the very end, they're like, "Okay, I got an idea. What if we had like a conveyor belt and the kittens are going to the end and there's like a big chopping knife action and it cuts the kittens up?" It's just so stupid. And they're trying to like sell this amazing news story and they stage it all. So funny. It's just, it makes fun of the media and how they frame things. It's literally Nightcrawler is the comedy and I love it. So one of the best episodes of this series and one of my favorite by far.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a great episode. So Frank Sets Sweet Dee on Fire is a great episode. It's in season 3. Definitely check that one out. It's a must-see for the show. And then season 4, I have Mac and Charlie Die Part 1. And there is a Part 2, but I love the first half. I think the first half is perfect. Basically, Mac's dad is getting out of prison, and he wants to kill Mac and Charlie because they refuse to contraband trucks into prison. So Charlie's like accepted his fate. Mac's dad's getting out and he's coming to kill them. So he starts dousing himself in lighter fluid, and it reminds me of Better Off Dead, almost, the movie.
So drinking
like,
the lighter
stop
fluid?
Dousing yourself in lighter fluid. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, and then it's so great. So they're like, okay, we're gonna have to stage our own deaths. So we're gonna have to leave some like evidence behind that we died. So he's like, okay, so like let's like leave a tooth behind or something. Okay, Charlie, I'm gonna pull one of your teeth out. He gets pliers and he puts it up to his mouth and he's like, okay, ready? And pull. And he goes, oh, that just came right out there. And then Charlie's like, huh? He reaches in his mouth and he just starts pulling out his teeth. And he's like, dude, you really got to brush your teeth more. And he's just like, oh, he's pulling out teeth. It's like a body horror joke. It just adds to the illiteracy. Charlie doesn't bathe himself. He doesn't properly hygiene it. It's just so funny. And he just, all throughout the episode, he keeps pulling teeth out. So they scatter teeth in the car. They have the car, littered with teeth. And then Mac's plan is to fake their suicide. They leave a suicide tape, which comes into play at the very end of the episode. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to drive out that wall 45 miles an hour. And then I'm going to dive out the last second. And the car's going to smash and go up in a blaze of glory. And so he's like, okay. And then Charlie gets out of the car and he's like, well, you got to ride in the car with me. And he goes, no, you drive the car. I'll watch or whatever. And so he's like, drives at the car. He just drives straight at the wall and just smashes into the wall. Never jumped out of the car. And then Charlie runs up screaming. And then Mac is like bleeding from the head. He has a concussion. It's so funny. And then they end up going to a pond. You gotta look it up.
That kind of reminds
me
of the terrorist, the episode where when they do like the fake video where he's like, I'll hit you on head very hard, give you money or whatever.
Yeah, the gang gets jihad or whatever. They threaten this Jewish business owner that encroaches on their land. They start going to war with him. It's so crazy, but I just love that. And so they go to the pawn shop. They find this wedding dress. Mac is obsessed with the wedding dress. He's like, this is so sad. I have to. So he ends up wearing the wedding dress. Makes no sense, but and they keep giving him poppers because he keeps like fading in and out of consciousness because he's still bleeding. They never take him to the hospital from his accident, and I just love that. And then what's so funny is the other B plot is with Dennis and Frank and Dee at the bar. They find like in their bar between the two bathroom stalls, and so they find a. And I normally don't find that funny, but there's just a great moment where Frank says he's like acting it out. He's like, I would like some, please. It's just so creepy because at the end of the episode, Frank is so sad by Charlie and Mac dying. Frank is so sad that he's losing Charlie because he's kind of taking Charlie as his son. And so they leave a suicide tape and they're like, our lives were horrible. We decided to kill ourselves and end it all. And Mac's like, well, actually, my life was pretty sweet. And he goes, well, my life's pretty good too. And he's like, yeah, okay. And they Thelma and Louise drive at the wall. Dennis is super pissed at them because he's like, I can't believe they didn't include me in their suicide pact. Like, so narcissist. He's just so pissed that he wasn't included in their suicide pact. At the end of the episode, he keeps pulling teeth out. And then he's just sitting at the top of the roof. He's like, dude, you keep pulling teeth out. You're not going to be able to eat your hot dog. And he's like, I'll just suck it down. It's just a little line, and it gets me to laugh every time. But anyway, so great. And there's a second part of the episode, but the first half, that's where it ends. They're on the roof, still hiding, and it's just great. So, and then, of course, Frank builds, he literally finds a mannequin to pretend it's Charlie. And he's like, I love you, Frank. Oh, I love you too, other Charlie. He starts crying. It's so funny. Like Frank Reynolds, dude, Danny DeVito. I'm so glad he joined the show. So that's episode 7. Dee Has a Heart Attack is great. Season 4. Dennis and Dee are working out and they're taking all these supplements and everything. And she's like, I've had nothing but the squirts. It's like, oh, that's just your buddy flushing out all the toxins. While I, on the other hand, haven't pooped in days. She's like, oh. He's like, yeah. But see, my body's absorbing every piece of nutrient. It's working at maximum efficiency. It's just so funny. Like all these health trends are all nonsense. I love that. And then what's so great is Frank ends up in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He ends up like in an insane asylum, and it's the same actress from One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest. They had her, and then it literally ends where the Native American friend grabs the drinking fountain, throws it out the window, and Frank escapes. It's just amazing because these guys are very cinema, like they love old movies. There's references to every kind of movie. I think they're cinephiles, honestly, like us, because most of their shows they have references to like Reservoir Dogs when they kidnap the little leprechaun. The $1 Million Baby, Rambo, The Shining, when they go to Charlie's apartment, and E.T., Frank's head is like among the stuffed animals, and of course Lethal Weapon. So there's just a lot of fun movie homages that they do throughout their show. So really, really funny. And then of course in that episode, Charlie has the famous meltdown where he has the conspiracy theory web. They go to this company, they get hired, they get paid barely minimum wage, and they're supposed to be delivering mail to everyone in the building. And Charlie's convinced that no one in the building exists and it's all a big scheme. And he's like, everyone on the top floor is yelling about how they don't have their mail. They do exist. But Charlie doesn't know how to read, so he's not getting anyone any of their mail. And it's just great. Like he's going crazy. He's like, Pepe Celia. I keep hearing the name Pepe Silva. And I go to Carol from HR. Carol! It's just so funny. It's like literally the conspiracy theorist meme That's from Charlie Day from that episode. It's just really funny. And then he's just like, oh, Barney's here. He's the one that tipped me off to the Pepe Silva. He's like, wait, who's Barney? He goes, what, you don't see him standing? And then they cut back to Charlie. He's gone. It was a figment of his imagination. He's like, oh, shiz. Where'd he go? Just really funny. He's like totally losing his mind. And then season 5, the gang exploits the housing crisis. It's so funny. This is when they introduced this character, the lawyer, for the second time. The lawyer was there when Frank's wife died, and they like give all the will out to everyone. And and Dennis is grateful because he gets the house, while Frank and Dee are really pissed off because they get nothing. But this lawyer is like, they're fighting about this house because Frank has this family that's losing their home. They bought a foreclosed home, and they still have until a certain date to move out. But he's like, they're going to trash the place. We got to get them out of there. And so there's a lawyer there, and it's the same lawyer from before that helped him with the will. And he's just like, Charlie gets into like acting like he knows so much about law. It's just so great. He's just like, hey man, you and I, we know a lot about the law and everything. We're good men in the law. It's so funny. And he's like, I'm getting a sense that you have a tenuous grasp on the English language in general. So funny. They just insult, and he's like, filibuster. Do you know what that word means? It's just, and then he freaks out, punches his way out the door. It's just amazing. But then getting my realtor license, Dennis and Dee, Mac and Dennis, they get their realtor license. Well, they don't even get their realtor license, but they start selling homes, vinegar and honey, housing thing. And so Mac and Dennis start like, it's good cop, bad cop. Dennis is like the nice guy. He's like, hey guys, I want you to look around at the home and enjoy it. And Mac gets up in his face. He's like, are you going to buy this house, man? And she's like, I don't know. It seems a little big for us. He's like, what? You think this house is too big? Maybe you should ask your wife what she wants. Maybe it's like so weird. They end up leaving. Freaking amazing. So I just love seeing them. And then at the very end, they pretend to be a couple, and Mac and Dennis are fighting about who wins the bread, who's the power couple. He's like, well, I'm the... It's like, yeah, but I'm the breadwinner, so I'm more successful. It's just, they're not even really a couple, and they're fighting about, in this fictitious world, like, who's more successful. I love that. That's just what makes this show so freaking good, dude. And then we talked about the Dennis system. Love that. Gang gets a houseboat. Amazing episode. It's so funny. Yeah, I'll just get some of those delicious oysters. Hang on. It's like, don't eat those, Charlie. Those are barnacle. They're highly toxic. Don't eat them. They'll make you very sick. I love that. Just so funny. And then, of course, they're throwing everything out of the boat. Charlie is going into the river to find the keys because Frank threw overhand instead of underhand. That's a hilarious conversation for another day. But he throws the keys into the water, so he has to go and dive and get all these items. Dee is throwing out items. He thinks he's finding buried treasure from a horse massacre. It doesn't make sense, but he's like, I think there's this horse massacre that happened. It's just so great. So he's finding all this nonsense that they were throwing out of the houseboat, and he's bringing it back in. It's just so funny. And then, of course, Jordan mentioned these guys on the houseboat. It's so great. He's like, hey, man, like, what if we asked him? Like, hey, bro, how'd you lose that hand? Diabetes. It's like, not much of an adventure, are they? Yeah. And then, are we the tasty treats? Yeah, we already mentioned that, but I love that. Are we the tasty treats is such a great line. Okay, one episode I mentioned, Jordan couldn't believe it. Okay, Little Beauties. Frank Reynolds' Little Beauties. I love the movie Little Miss Sunshine, and this spoke to it. This pageantry, this is so funny. Frank really gets in a bind in this one because he's like, hey, we're gonna be throwing a beauty pageant. He's like, this is a great idea, because Frank is like, he's a womanizer. Well, he thinks he is. I think he's just pays a lot of or something. But so he's always excited. He's like, we're gonna get a bunch of models in here and get swimsuits and everything. And then they're like, oh, this sounds great. What could possibly go wrong? And it's for little kids. It's a beauty pageant for like children. So it's like a little Miss Sunshine pageantry, right? Or whatever you call those, like the little kid pageantries. So Dennis or Frank is so concerned that he's gonna get associated as a, so he's like going out of his way. He's like, okay, we gotta come out with a song that says we don't. There's nothing that we could do that would make people think that we faster than writing a song about it. Like, it's so funny. Like, and then for some reason he's like, he's about to do the show. He gets a guy to come in and do his makeup. It's a guy from the morgue. So he has like white makeup. He looks like ugly, grotesque Michael Jackson. It's so random. And then at the end of the show, he's like, okay, ladies, you go to your dressing room over there, and I will be over here on the other side of the stage. So funny. Then he goes back there, the mortician's doing his makeup again, and he has his mic still on, and he's like, hey, so you're a mortician. He starts talking. Everyone in the pageant can hear him, and he's like, I wouldn't mind if you... It's so disgusting. And they finds out that he has the mic on the whole time. So funny. I just think it's one of Danny DeVito's finest episodes. I just love it. We don't... Oh my gosh. And then the last one, my number one, it's one of the best, is The Gang Gets Analyzed in season 8. And it is an episode where this is technically a bottle episode, but it just so perfectly lays out all of the characters and their biggest flaws. Each one of them goes into a psychiatrist, right? or what do you call, is it a psychiatrist or a therapist? It's one of the two. But in the end, you find out at the end of the episode, they're only there because they want the psychiatrist to determine who's going to clean the dishes. But it is so funny because all of them are so messed up at this point. Season 8, you've already seen him do really despicable things. Mac with his and erratic behavior is so funny. He's like, I've lost 60 pounds in 3 months. And she's like, that's impossible. He's like, first of all things are possible with God. Write that down. I don't know why I thought that was so funny. And then Frank ends up confessing that when he was a kid, he opened up to a psychiatrist and he ended up in a nitwit school where he like met a frog roommate and he had his first kiss. And he was like in an insane asylum when he was a kid. That's amazing. Dennis is giving size pills to Mac because Mac got overweight. So he gave him like these like diet pills so Mac would lose all of his weight. And Dennis is talking about how he still manipulates Mac in all of his life decisions. It's just amazing. It's so funny. Dee gets in there and she's like a failed actress, right? And so she's like, oh, I was actually once extended the role of to act opposite of Ryan Gosling in The Notebook. And she's like, I feel like you're lying to me. It's like, oh, no, it really happened. And it's so sad. Like, it's so hard to watch. Like, Dee is a failed actress and lies to her therapist about delusions of grandeur and about the successful life that she never had. It's just so funny. And of course, Charlie's in there. Charlie goes in, he's complaining about Charlie work that he has to do. And he's like, hey, man, I didn't complain about it because I like dark, slippery things. I like being naked. Bleach smells good. It tastes good. Being comfortable in your own skin, right? So if I had more skin, I could never do a bad thing in real life. It's amazing. He's like so dumb. And she's just like, I feel like you're mirroring what I'm saying, but you're not understanding me. So you're saying I need to release the pigeon. Go, pigeon. And he pulls out a dead pigeon from his shirt pocket, and it just flops on the table and dies. It's so fetching funny.
Yeah, anyway, also reminds me of Arrested Development when he's got the dove. Mm-mm.
Yes. Yeah. The Jove, he's got the pigeon and it's dead.
What's your return policy on doves?
What's your return policy? Oh my gosh, it's so great. And then again, Dee keeps lying and she's like, tell me I'm good. 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 And she just keeps saying it to her therapist. It's so funny. Anyway, and then she's like, you're good. And she goes, ta-da! I was acting the whole time, huh? So cringeworthy, so bad. But anyway, at the very end, they all choose Dee to wash the dishes. She votes Dee. The psychiatrist votes Dee to wash the dishes. And they're like, yeah, Dee, you wash the dishes. It's so funny. But anyway, that episode encapsulates everyone perfectly. You get all their problems. Mac is manipulative. Frank is tragic past. Charlie, he's doesn't understand pretty much anything that's going on, and Mac is tortured by Mac controlling his life. So it's just an amazing episode, and it's so funny, and it really shows you the character of all of them. So the game gets analyzed as such a great one, and it's one of the top 10. So but anyway, it's fun to rant.
Do we recommend it?
Do we recommend the show? Absolutely.
If as long as you're okay watching
Milkstick.
TV MA shows.
Yes,
there is mature content.
It definitely
Yes.
depends. Yeah, if Rick and Morty's up your alley, then this won't bother you.
And I just want to throw out just a few other quotes, obviously, as you think of any of them from the series. But, as a straight man who poops, it's amazing. Charlie dresses up in a skirt to poop because he used to go with his mom in the restrooms. She would take him and make him dress up as a girl with her. Don't know why. Not like anyone would bat an eye with a kid going in with their mom. But anyway, it just made me laugh. As a straight man who poops, it's so funny.
No, just
Charlie's illiterate.
Two moments that I really love is when he's like shooting a laser pen and his girlfriend who's transitioning to a cat. He's like, I rest my case.
I rest my case. You expect me to pay alimony to a feline? Dennis is freaking out. He's so funny. They're at court. That's another great episode with the lawyer. Charlie's uncle is such a creep, but he makes me laugh. He's like, oh, you think the camera would add 10 pounds to my hands? Are my hands going to look that small on camera? And then he's in court, and he has these rubber hands that are monstrosities. And he's like, I rest my case. And he flings his hand, and his hand goes flying. His glove flies off his hand. He's like, nobody look at me. It's so weird, and it's so funny. But yes, she's like, cat. She's like, what? He's like, I am now a cat. He's like, you expect me to pay alimony to this feline? It's so great. Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Well, and how shallow they are, like him like getting married
Yes.
to her and finding out she has a dead tooth, and then he divorces her
he regrets
just for
marrying
that.
her, and he gets a divorce the day after they get married. It's so bad. It's again, these are the worst people, dude. Some of the characters that are around them, we mentioned this: the Ponderosas, the Boyles. The Boyles were almost the Boyle brothers. They're
And
disgusting.
speaking
already,
of
as it is.
Cameron talking about like disturbing people drinking milk, they always drink milk, Cameron.
Always drinking milk. Warm milk. It's disgusting.
What
And
the
then he
fuck?
gets stabbed with a knife, and he's like, make an example out of him. Stab somebody. And then he stabs him. He stabs his brother. He's like, not me, you fool, step one of them. And then he takes a glass of milk and pours it on his open wound. It's so gross.
What the fudge?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Anyway, I love Rickety Cricket. He was like this priest, and Dee like manipulates him into thinking that he likes her only to get at him or what she wants from him, and then immediately like rescinds him. And he's like, I left the monastery for you and everything. She's like, yeah, tough walking. She always calls him some like mean, like whatever, you rube. And Rickety Cricket at the end, he ends up being like becoming a complete homeless person that does drugs. He's got a scratched eye. He is divulged into like just such a sad, pathetic human being. But there's an amazing episode where he has lemons. He does like something for drug or something for lemons, and he's sucking on lemons at the bar, and he's just like, he's got like gangrene or something. I don't know what else, but anyway, sucking the lemons, so funny.
Yeah, that reminds me of the other part I enjoyed is when they did a laugh track episode, and then they're like, this isn't really funny, but put the laugh track in, and now it tells me this is where I need to laugh, and it's funny now.
It's like, this is really dark, but now they put the laughter, it's not so dark anymore. Now I know when to laugh. Now I know when it's funny. I love that they make fun of sitcoms that do that. I've been poisoned by my constituents, and he barfs on that woman's face. He swallowed all of the blood pellets or whatever. Would you like an egg in this trying time? Makes no sense. Anyway, I love it. Vote for me is the right thing to do, Philly, so do. This doesn't make any sense. He reads like a speech that Charlie wrote for him, and it's completely it doesn't make any sense. It's great. Just a great episode. Again, how despicable they are. They have to, because they set a building on fire. Cameron, you mentioned that Jewish guy. They burn his business down.
Oh my God.
So they burn it down, but it's technically an accident. They just wanted to make it smell like poop. They lit a bag of poop on fire, and I think there was a gas leak and it exploded. But they have to do civil service. Anyway, so Charlie is like, or Max like, put the safety pin in your sweatbands and point the pin outward. like he's teaching all these kids playing basketball to fight dirty, and then Dennis on the other team, he's like, okay, so if you jump down and land on his foot like that, you'll break it in 3 different places. It's just teaching the kids how to fight dirty playing basketball. It's just amazing, like what they'll do to get their team to win. So funny. There's so many great, funny lines where Dennis again shows his hand of how psychotic he is, but I think I have pretty much everything I wanted to say there. There's this one great gag, though, where Dennis, or Mac and Dee, they're going to this golf club, this exclusive golf club, and they're like, okay, I'm going to pretend that I'm some big hotshot, and you be my secretary. And he's like, yeah, you just tell them to forfeit over that $685,000 investment, and tell them I don't want it, or whatever. He's acting like a big shot. And he's like, because I'm rich. And then she's like, yeah, I would do that, except, and then she's like, again, in this fictitious story, she refuses to be his secretary, and she's like, I'm this rich, philanthropist or whatever as well. It's just amazing. And she's like, so what investments did you have them in? Technology. And she's like, what kind of technology? He's like, lasers. It's so stupid. And then they try to get Charlie in the dating scene. It's an amazing episode. That was an honorable mention. It's just where they try to get Charlie back in the dating scene. He's sweating profusely. He ate cheese. His breath smells bad. And she's like, so what is it that you do? I'm a full on. Did you just say you're a full on? Yeah, dyslexics,
I don't discriminate.
handicaps, black children. And she's like, philanthropist? Oh, yeah, that's what it is. It's amazing. And they make a dating profile for him. It's one of the funniest things. They're like, okay, Charlie, what is your favorite food? Milk steak. Milk steak? What do you mean? What's milk steak? Just say milk steak. Everyone knows what a milk steak is. It's like, no one knows what milk steak is. I'm going to put pizza. Okay, what are your interests? Magnets. What, like collecting magnets, playing with magnets? Just magnets in general. It's like, I'm going to put snowboarding. It's just so great. His friends are helping him create like a profile. It has nothing to do with Charlie. Oh, it's just so great. And then, of course, Charlie, but, time capsule, but. It's amazing. There's a line from Charlie where he brings a bag of spaghetti everywhere, and he's just like, what is your spaghetti policy here? That's so funny. Anyway, it's so chock full of things. These are despicable human beings. They do some of the most despicable things to pretend to be crippled, to get sympathy, to get chicks. I don't know how. They try to all throughout the show. It's so bad. They exploit a water stain thinking it's the Virgin Mary. They sell tickets for people to come look at it. It's so bad. They try to put a dumpster. They find a dumpster baby, try to put it in a tanning bed. It's so bad. So anyway, they kidnap a guy that left him a bad review. So it just goes on and on. They just do so many deplorable things, and I love this show. So you guys check it out. If it sounds like your cup of tea to watch the most depraved side of humanity, the worst possible things that you would never in your worst nightmares say to the ones that you loved, or even to strangers, this is the show for you. Because it lets out all that aggression. So check out the show and leave us a review, 5 stars. Check us out. Leave us an email, 5 stars. Email futuromovies@gmail.com. Check us out on Spotify. Are we still on Spotify? Maybe
Some
not.
episodes are.
Check out our full catalog on YouTube and Instagram. So check us out there, follow us, and share us.
Well,
so,
all our episodes will be on YouTube, and some of the
All episodes
episodes will
managed.
be on Spotify, Apple Podcast.
Got it.
And then also make mention, we apologize for Ty's audio on Death Note, Whiplash,
Oh, no.
and Me, Earl,
All 3
and
episodes.
The Dying Girl. Sorry, guys.
Oh man, I have to apologize for my audio. The things I was saying, I don't sound too good, huh? Did I do something wrong? It was my noise, right? It's crazy.
You were wearing a coat, and you were fidgeting, and so you heard a shh, 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 shh the whole time.
Got it.
Sorry, guys.
Well, now I'm not wearing any clothes at all, so we got rid of that problem. We addressed the problem. Here it goes. Lots of love. I just watched this show, Jack Reacher. It's pretty good. Liked it. Recommend it.
There's a
VidAngel.
TV show now?
Yeah, it's I like
As
it.
good as the movie?
I actually like it better than the movie, but it's very different from the movie.
Okay.
Like, it's not Tom Cruise's charm, but it's a guy that like actually makes sense in the Jack Reacher world. It's like a giant meathead dude, like a hulking man. It's kind of like Chris Pratt meets like John Cena. He's huge,
Well,
and that's what kind of works because he's just like a lethal weapon, basically.
You'll have to tell us when
Hands are
it's
freaking
done.
registered weapons. Yeah, I like it so far. I think you should start it. Just check it out. I think it's 7 episodes.
Well, when
long,
you
but
finish the
definitely-
whole season, you'll have to tell
Cracking
us if
sound.
it's good.
I have 2 episodes left. Definitely check it out. It's amazing.
Well,
been good.
I'll know when you watch the last 2 episodes.
I am so confused right now. Do you refuse to watch the show until I watch the
Yeah.
whole thing? Okay, 1 second. I just want to rant about No Time to Die. I know I mentioned it, watching James Bond getting Me Too'd. It's not like I like the guy womanizing, but have you guys seen it yet? Have you guys seen No Time to Die?
Yes.
The end. Just blowing. Okay, I'm gonna blowing me away. Any listeners out there that don't want 007 to be spoiled, I just want to say they murdered James Bond. They couldn't let him leave the movie. They couldn't have him dive into the water. They couldn't have anything. They just had to blow him up right before your eyes.
Because he had the virus, Ty.
But see, what's so funny about that is like, you know how like in Mission Impossible, they have Tom Cruise a distance off and he's watching his wife and she knows he's there. He's always a silent protector watching her selflessly. They could have had an ending like that. Instead, James Bond is like, oh, you have the virus. And he's like, no, I don't, because I'm dead.
Well, it's because it was the last movie with Daniel, so.
I know. I just feel like they literally murdered him. And, like, heaven forbid a 007 movie be fun for anybody is my point. So, anyway, big disappointment. So, you're right. You're right. Because I started half that movie and I said I liked it. And then I finished it. And now you're right. It ended poorly. So, maybe Jack Reacher will suck. Maybe they'll screw it up the last
Like I
few
said,
seasons.
I'm not going to watch
Things
it
I'm
until you
looking
tell
forward
me.
to. I now have my own VidAngel account, so I'm now going to watch Ozark Season 4. Very excited to see that now. So, check him out.
Look at Ty trying to be a good person.
Trying to be a good person, even though I swore way too much on this podcast.
Dude, Chosen, amazing.
I can't watch it. I don't know why. It says I can't watch it. Do you have to watch it on like an app or something? Because I tried to watch it on my Apple TV. It doesn't work.
I don't know, but I own it and you should be able to watch it, so.
It says, you can't watch. I'm not kidding. I don't know why it says it. I've tried to watch it several times, so I'm going to have to get it to work.
Satan doesn't want you to watch it.
Sometimes science is a liar sometimes, making everyone that listen to him and listen look like a bee. Slaps a B word on him.
Bye.
All right, guys. Take it easy, everybody. Bye.